Shocking new report shows locking up criminals reduces crime. Film at 11. What the hell? Let's do it right now. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. So, gentlemen, forgive the snarky intro because I don't want to make fun of this new City Journal article by a guy named Tal Fortgang. I've never heard of him, but it's a great article, and he collects just a lot of data in here that our friends on the left apparently need constant reminders of because it's just so obvious. So this is from the article. It says, violent crime is overwhelmingly the work of a very small group of repeat offenders. That it is highly concentrated. And I got to tell you guys, I was shocked when I saw just how highly concentrated this was. In New York City in 2022, just 327 people accounted for a third of all shoplifting, with, get this, more than 6,000 arrests between the 327 people. In Oakland, 0.1% of the population, 400 people, committed a majority of the city's homicides in recent years. In 2014, data showed that 3/4 of state prisoners, that's like your core prison population, had at least 5 prior arrests. Nearly 5% had 31 arrests or more, and that is a larger share than those imprisoned after just a single arrest. And he concluded that the case for an incapacitation-first approach to crime control follows directly from this data. Scott, you don't seem to be wearing your shocked face right now. Why is that?
It's because I used to live in a little town that was had been a little boom town, and then had kind of fallen on hard times. And I was warned that it wasn't probably a good idea. At this point, I was a pastor of a church, and they said, it may not be a great idea for you to live downtown, especially if you're going to have children. And, it's kind of a dangerous area to live in. We were not downtown for very long before we basically knew all the criminals. And I'm not even kidding. It was like we were rarely surprised where somebody said, oh, something happened and we don't know who did it. Like everybody...
Round up the usual suspects, right?
Yes. But it really is true that there was a very small set. Now, the whole town only had about 10,000 people in it, but that just takes the scale of your New York or Oakland numbers and just brings it down to a small town size. I got to know the police pretty well there, and the police would sometimes either stop by or give me a call and say, hey, we just locked up so-and-so. Could you come down and see him? I mean, the police were asking me to visit the prisoners in jail, and they would, I remember one night we had a guy whose last name was Pig, and he was at the police station. It was not one of the officers. And he had gotten involved in a knife fight. And during the course of the knife fight, he had grabbed the blade. And so, that just gives me the creeps to say it. And so he had this huge amount of gauze that they had wrapped around his hand, and it was kind of soaking through. And so they put me in a room with him. Usually when I went to visit people in jail, they were on the other side of the glass,
No knife, though, right?
Yeah. No, as far as I know, he had been disarmed. But anyway, so they put me in a room with him, and I'm just sitting there across the table. I had not met this guy before, but I was talking with him. And, obviously I'm pastor of a church, so I'm sharing Jesus Christ with him. And after we got out of there, the police officer who had been standing guard the whole time, just in case he was needed, thanked me for coming down and said he had been praying for me the whole time. And, it's a small town, yes, but you'll find in towns of all sizes, there is an unbelievably small number of people who are responsible. It's more than the Pareto principle. It's not like 80-20 rule where they say, 80% of the crimes are committed by 20% of the criminals. It's a smaller number than that. Now, you think, oh, well, just lock up all the criminals. You can. That's one approach to it. But I think it also says that no matter what the media is trying to do because they get eyeballs by telling you that the city is a dangerous place to be, in reality, there are a very few places that are very dangerous to be. And there are very few people who are dangerous to be around. And in my experience in this little town, when I got to know some of those people who were involved in violent crimes or involved in drug crimes or whatever, inevitably I found that these people actually were somebody's baby. They were messed up people.
Oh, sure.
Who had them.
Victimizers tend to have been victims as kids.
And they were like, I remember talking to this one guy one day, and he had like a multicolored mohawk, bald on the sides and just this big mohawk down the middle. And I remember it was almost as if, it wasn't a voice that I heard or anything, but it was almost as if somebody spoke to me and said, that was somebody's baby. His mama held him in her arms and loved him. And somewhere along the line, things got messed up, and he needs to be restrained now.
Yeah.
So it's not like he doesn't need to have law enforcement. But the encouraging thing is that it's not rampant. It's not like Gotham, where all of a sudden everybody's gone mad with criminal intent and is just running wild in the streets.
Yeah, that was one of the lines from this article that struck me, and I think this was taken from James Q. Wilson's book, was I think 50 years old now, called Thinking About Crime. That the vast majority of people are not just on this kind of slope where they might slip into a life of crime all of a sudden. No, most people live pretty straight and narrow lives. That's borne out by these numbers. Bill, so there's good news in all this, and it looks like we're finally slowly returning back to pre-COVID, pre-St. George Floyd of meth crime levels. The bad news is that we still have too many Democrat-run cities. I'm thinking of Chicago and Charlotte that just had a couple of really high-profile, terrible attacks in the last couple of months that have these catch and release programs for some of the worst offenders. And I guess my question to you is, we know, they know, so why?
This is I knew the numbers I didn't know the numbers were extreme, as you said.
Yeah.
And my first reaction is to just want to cry, and not cry at the tragedy of it. Just cry at the simplicity of the solution to it. Just cry at how simple it is to solve 80-90% of this problem by locking up, in every city you lock up 2,000 people. A city of 1 million, and you lock up 2,000-3,000 people, and crime drops by 90% or something like that, right? By the way, when Scott was telling his story, I reminded so much of that scene in one of the Richard Pryor stand-up specials where he was talking about how he was going to go perform up at the state penitentiary, and he was down with the brothers and everything, and he's going to get in there about the white man, and the oppression and all the racism and all the other stuff. He says, and I got in there, I spent about 2 hours. He said, "Thank God for penitentiaries."
Remember that bit.
So, thank God for penitentiaries. We had the stabbing of this woman by a guy who had 46 prior convictions.
Something like that,
the
yeah.
person
just
poured,
an insane number.
Person who poured gasoline on that person in New York and lit them on fire, 50, 60 prior convictions. And you ask yourself, you know that future, hopefully human generations, but maybe, insectoids from Andromeda Galaxy will come and look at this time and just say, how could such an insane society run the electricity or keep the water flowing? There comes a point when even liberals have to be able to see this, and the reason that they don't is because we always concentrate on the wrong side of the balance of the scale. We always make it about whether or not lifetime incarceration is fair or unfair to the criminal who's an individual, when in point of fact we should be making the argument about the victims. If 300 people are responsible for whatever percent of carjackings in Oakland, most of the people in Oakland are black people, which means that of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of blacks in that community, they are being victimized by 300 people. There's nothing racist about this. There's nothing immoral about this. I do feel, my feeling on this is pretty much simple. Three violent felonies and you're gone. And And to the degree that people can be saved, as Scott mentioned, I think there's a role for heroic missionary action where people voluntarily go into these places and see who can be saved from these lifetime imprisonments. But I'll bet you if the total number of violent criminals in society is 0.5%, I'd be willing to bet you the number of them that are sent to prison that can be saved is maybe 5%, right? So
of that 0.5%.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So what is the matter with us? What kind of moral virtue is it to allow this kind of predation, even on smaller things where you see these cases? I watch a lot of police body cam videos, which has done more to exonerate the police than anything in the history of police service.
Phenomenal.
But you'll see people who are getting arrested, and sometimes arrested for killing people as drunk drivers. You find out they had 7 prior convictions of drunk driving for which they were given probation or a fine. And it makes me want to go not after if I had somebody who was killed in a drunk driving incident, and I found out that the person that killed them had been let out 6 times previously, I'd go after the judge. That's who I'd want to go after, more than the alcoholic who is causing this. We're supposed to be rational, sane creatures. There's nothing clearer than this. We can solve this problem very, very easily and make everybody happier.
Yeah, and not to mention safer, even in those formerly dangerous parts of town. There's a part of this problem that I wish the City Journal article had gone into, because I think this really gets to the crux of the problem. Crime rates are much lower than they were in the 70s or 80s. That's the great news. Even after the COVID spike, the BLM spike and all that, we're still in much better shape than we were 35, 40 years ago. But we still have the crazies that are out there. And I did the math on it. I did the research on this. And psychiatric hospitalization rates have plummeted since 1963. That's when we passed the wildly underfunded Community Mental Health Act that was supposed to be nice. We'll have local communities take care of the mentally ill. But what happened was essentially nothing. We emptied the asylums. By 2025, the U.S. has fewer than 12 public psychiatric beds per 100,000 people, and that's down from over 300 per 100,000 people before Kennedy, JFK, and Congress shifted the responsibility for mental health to communities that just weren't up to the task. So then I think of the killing of Irina Zarutska in Charlotte earlier this year. Bill, you brought her up. The man who murdered her, DeCarlos Brown, he was mentally ill. Instead of being institutionalized, he was left on the streets where his condition was exacerbated by drug abuse. So you've got a crappy local criminal justice system that put him through this endlessly revolving door of incarceration and drug-addled homelessness, and it was really just a matter of time before he murdered somebody. And that's the part where we are absolutely crazy, where we're not taking care of our mentally ill. We put them on the streets and we let them get addicted to drugs, which just, it's this cycle of awfulness that feeds on itself. And we take people who could be taken care of and we turn them into some of the most dangerous, random, and unpredictable killers out there. We're the crazy ones on that. All right, that's your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.